All right, this week, as promised, I promised you on Monday, I was going to talk about the issue of the sanctity of human life all week, and I've talked about it every day. And I'm going to continue to talk about it. Why? Because the Democrats are talking about it. Now, many here in our nation's capital, and I've had conversations at the very top of the Republican establishment here, why they need to continue to lead on this issue, and they're listening. And thank you for helping me be able to do that, because when you respond, when we put out an action item, they listen. So it's very helpful. The president on Tuesday announcing that he's running for re-election. Not quite crickets, but it was all those golf claps that you heard around the country. Actually, the cheers were on the Republican side because he's got a good record for Republicans to run on. But here's what he said. I'm going to play this clip of his video that he released announcing that he was running for re-election. Clip number 6.
MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms, cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes from the very wealthy, dictating what health care decisions women can make, banning books, and telling people who they can love, all while making it more difficult for you to be able to vote.
Now, honestly, I don't do this flippantly. I really don't. Because I do think it's important that we respect the office of president and that we, I just think we're supposed to. I think we're supposed to pray for him, and I do. I pray for the president almost every day. I pray that he would do the right thing. Because I want to live in a country that's blessed for doing the right thing, not cursed because of the evil that is being pushed by this administration. But the president's lying, okay? I don't say that flippantly. You've heard on this program repeatedly that the Republicans are not going to cut Social Security and Medicare. That's not what they're doing. But he continues to say that because they want to scare people. But notice what he's talking about when it comes to fundamental freedoms. He's talking about abortion. He's talking about this whole transgender ideology that's being pushed on our children. Now, if you think, well, he just made that in a passing statement. Well, here is the same day, the vice president made this statement. She had this to say here in Washington, D.C. at Howard University. Clip number 7.
The highest court of our land, Thurgood's Court, took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the people of America, from the women of America. Fundamental freedoms are under attack in our country today.
I mean, that's scary. Not fundamental freedoms being taken away, but the vice president, she's scary. She really is. She's scary. Because she is solely focused on killing unborn children. 2 weeks ago, she was out in Los Angeles at a women's march saying the same thing, that democracy is under attack by these individuals who are working to protect the unborn. That's scary. She is a scary person. Well, joining me now to talk more about this is Meg Kilgannon. She is our educational expert, senior fellow for educational studies here at the Family Research Council, and we're going to talk education. We're also going to talk about this agenda item of Democrats. Meg, welcome back to the program.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
All right, I want to get into your area of expertise of education, but I had to vent. This is a big issue, and the Democrats continue to talk about it. The president's talking about it. Almost every other word out of his mouth is about taking the lives of unborn children. And if Republicans won't stand up and defend it, and let me put this in, I got to be very careful about this. I don't want to come across with a broad brush, because we just heard the state senator from North Dakota who was anything but being silent on this issue. So I'm talking about some here in our nation's capital that are saying this is a state's issue. States may be taking the point position on this and doing the bulk of the work, but we still need to talk about it here.
No, absolutely. And that whole setup, the clips that you played, that's classic Democratic Party politics, right? The politics of fear and the politics of framing everything as if mean people are trying to take things away from innocent, hardworking Americans, when exactly the opposite is the case. as a voter, it offends me that the way they speak about these things.
But we got to call them out.
Yes, to try to frame the concept of freedom as the ability to end the life of a child in his or her mother's womb, that's just offensive.
I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the vice president was at Howard University for a reproductive freedom rally. I mean, last time I checked the headlines, there were a lot of things happening in this nation. Inflation going through the roof, interest rates, the world is teetering. And that's what they're focused on. And they accuse us of being the ones talking about it. Well, we're simply responding to what they're trying to cram down our throats.
Right. And they package it especially in the little Biden ad or whatever he's calling his announcement speech. They package it with abortion and the quote unquote book banning. Right. Which, is just parents saying we'd rather not have pornography in the library for our kids, right? The things that they say, the opposite is in fact the case of what's happening.
Well, great transition to the education issue because that's exactly what that was about. But I did want to ask you a question before we get to the education issue. How many times do you think he had to take that commercial? I bet the reason he did it that way is so that he would get it right. And I just have to imagine he didn't get it on the first take.
I imagine not. And they don't have the Cracker Jacks video people that we have here at FRC to work with. So it probably did take them a long time to come up with that.
So let's talk about the education issue. You heard earlier, we had Congressman Mary Miller on talking about the testimony of the Select Committee on the Coronavirus yesterday, where Randy Weingarten, a union person,
yes,
undue influence. I mean, has the cell number of the director of the CDC. I didn't play that clip. Oh, I did play it at the top of the show, but the cell number of the CDC director and members of Congress were saying, "Well, I don't even have that number."
Right. Well, I have a personal anecdote about this. A friend of mine had elementary school age children in schools in a county near Richmond, Virginia, and they had their reopening plan all set to go. And she was telling her kids, yes, we're going to go back to school on Monday. And they were so excited. They miss their friends. They're old enough to still love their teachers and to be in that innocent part of a school age life. And we were talking on the phone, and she said they were going back. And I said, well, our school board in Fairfax is meeting this week, and they're not going to open our schools, and your union is not going to let your schools open either. And she said, well, but we have the plan. We're all ready to go. And we told the kids, and I said, well, you better tell them something else because I really don't think you're going back. And lo and behold, they didn't. And it was because of the kind of behind-the-scenes maneuvering and special access that someone like the ATF president has to our governmental leaders, because of the Biden administration.
When we already knew evidence was beginning to surface. Now we're not talking about the initial closings. We're talking about the reopenings.
Right.
This was a year after the coronavirus.
Right.
Where we knew we were having high levels of depression among children. Right. Children falling behind.
Yes.
There were a lot of issues.
Yes, and children all over the world were going back to school in person, and there were no issues. Right? We had evidence.
Well, we also had evidence that children were the least likely to suffer dramatic effects from the coronavirus.
Right. But they had so terrified the entire population, and especially teachers and, basically the Democratic voting base, right? About the dangers of this. And the accusation was, well, you're going to kill teachers if you let the children back into school, which is just terrible.
First it was the grandparents.
Right.
You're going to kill your grandmother if you go out of the house and you go see your grandmother. You're going to kill them.
Right.
Now, if you go to school, you're going to kill your teacher.
I mean, this is just a terrible, terrible situation to create for anybody.
But it's you mentioned it earlier. It's a typical tactic of the left.
The politics
it is the
of fear
mongering.
Yes, yes.
Because you can move a people when you scare people.
Right, right. And I would, the alternative to that is the politics of what's possible, right? The politics of hope and speaking about what we envision for a positive future moving forward, which is what I would love to hear from people on the other side.
So, well, let's talk about that silver lining coming out of this fear-mongering
Yes.
that we've witnessed in the last few years. Parents are stepping forward and taking
Parents are.
charge of their children and of their local schools.
They are, and it's great to see. We are hearing so frequently from people in the grassroots about the facts that they've taken over their school board and they're able to put through policies. And do we have information about this particular topic or that particular topic to help them in their work? And fortunately, we do. So it's
That's actually a part of what the president was saying in his announcement about the book banning.
about the book banning, right?
You know, I heard a great illustration about this where a parent, or actually it was a school board member, pushed back on this issue because their first school board meeting after they got elected, they were talking about these books being
Right.
inappropriate, and the attorney for the school board said, that's book banning. We don't engage in book banning. So the next meeting, the new school board member was better equipped and said, I want to put this Playboy magazine into the school library. I'm going to donate it. No, we can't do that. That's inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
You mean you would ban this?
Yes. Well, that's exactly the point. No one is banning any books. The process of selecting appropriate reading materials and appropriate library materials for educational
Right.
purposes is the exact opposite of banning books.
Well, the issue is the line of what's appropriate and what is not. That's
Yes.
what we're to talk. That's what we're
Right.
talking about.
Right.
Who's going to determine what is appropriate and what is not? It's not about banning books.
Certainly not. That is completely beyond the scope of the conversation, except when political purposes you want to exploit people's fear.
Right.
Then you want to
It's-
talk
it's
about
one of
that
those,
issue.
It's one of those dog whistles.
Right.
Banning.
We're certainly not doing that. There are educational materials that are appropriate for schools, and there are other books that are certainly free to be published in the marketplace, but that I, as a parent and a taxpayer, do not
exactly.
have to fund. Right?
My children are exposed to that. They're exposed to the children who are exposed to that, and it's my tax dollars that pay for it. And I have a voice in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we do live in a democracy, as they like to say.
But it's under attack.
Right?
It's under attack by,
they want a
according to the
democracy
vice president.
on everything
Yeah.
but this topic, right?
Well, everything but what they don't want people to change.
Right.
And that's why we have to be engaged. Now's the time actually to be thinking about school board elections.
Yes. School board elections happen all year long, and there are school board elections coming up in Texas. There are school board elections coming up in May. I think there are a few in June, and we have lots of information about that at www.frcaction.org/schools. And we'll be updating our school board boot camp later this month, and we're really just continuing to engage in this space and loving every minute.
So, folks, there's online resources, frcaction.org/schools, right?
Yes.
And so there's a school board boot camp that's on there. These are digital resources that are available. But are we looking at another school board boot camp coming up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And the next
so
one.
So you'll let me know?
Yes, I will let you know.
And our listeners and viewers will know as well. So, folks, it's a great opportunity to be, number one, praying about what the Lord would have you to do. Now is not the time to step back. Now is not the time to think, well, I'll let somebody else do it. My neighbor will take care of it. No, what is God calling you to do? So make it a matter of prayer. Now, it might not be that you're to be a candidate, but you might support one or help fund a campaign. But there's something for you to do, and you can find it at frcaction.org/schools. Meg Kilgannon, thanks for stopping in today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Always great to see you.